2016.
Good evening and welcome to the Utility Committee meeting. Thank you for coming on this cold night. We'll go ahead with roll call. John Hambacker. Harold Hamilton.
Present.
Katrina Pott.
Present.
David Weiss.
Present.
Kyle Williams. You have before you the agenda for the night. Could I have a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll make a motion to so approve.
A motion's been made. Is there a second? Motion's been made and seconded to approve tonight's agenda. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carried. I believe now we have the hometown grid presentation.
Yes, so, thank you, Mayor. So with us this evening via Zoom is Mr. John Pettit. He is with Hometown Grid, and so we're going to go ahead and pass it off to him. Forgive me, John, I forgot to turn the microphone on so you could hear who was with us this evening.
Okay.
Would you like us to do a quick kind of down the table so you can hear who's with us?
Yeah, that'd be great. And also, I was going to tell you real quick, just about 5 minutes ago, there's been an outage in one of the systems that I connect to for Hometown Grid, so I may not be able to show you part of the demo right now. It might pop back up here in just a minute, but we might have to delay that a little bit as far as on the demo side.
Okay. Okay, do you want to start, Mayor?
I'll start off. Mayor Greg Parker.
West Ward Alderman John Whiteland. Committee member David Weiss.
West Ward Alderwoman and Utility Committee Chairman Catherine Dent.
Utility Committee Member Trina Pott.
Utility Committee Member Harold Hamilton.
Committee member Kyle Williams.
And then we also have with us this evening, not sitting at the main table, Alderman Letchworth and Alderman Bowlerjack.
It's very nice to meet all of you. I really appreciate you having me tonight. And like I said, right now, the part of the system, the communication system is having some technical difficulties, but hopefully that's going to be back up really soon. So one option would be to do the presentation at the end of your all's meeting if it's back up and running then, or I can go over what Hometown Grid is and I can show you a lot of it even without that one component. Just so whatever is convenient for you.
It's your
all.
choice, guys. What do you want to do?
Let's go ahead and just keep going where we're at.
Okay.
Okay, let's just go ahead.
Go ahead. So John, they'd like to go ahead and move forward if you have the availability.
Yeah. Okay, what I will not be able to show you right now is just the live chat back and forth. I can show you some screenshots of that, but that's what's having some technical issues at the moment in the past 10 minutes or so since we jumped on the call, amazingly. So, but I'll go ahead and just give you a little bit of background. I'm John Pettit, Hometown Grid. I'm in Western Kentucky, and a little bit of my background is I've been programming for the past 18 to 20 years, and before that was in mainly website design and video production. And in the past 9 months to a year, I guess right around a year now, I've been running, or I started Hometown Grid. It's a family business, and it's spreading very quickly across Kentucky, Tennessee, and now Missouri. And in August, Greg Beavers out of Farmington invited me to come up to the MOPEP meeting to present this to MOPEP as a possibility of rolling it out to all the MOPEP members. And that went really well, and a lot of the members have been using it and signing up. And now they're offering it to all the MEC members at a 20% discount, or I'm offering it at a 20% discount since enough members have decided to sign up for it. So it's spreading rapidly, and it's helping communities all across Missouri. And it's just, this is kind of a once-in-a-lifetime sort of opportunity to be able to work on something like this and to do this much good through technology. And I've seen thousands of outages go through the system, and the morale of the communities and the morale of the utilities is just, it's unbelievable how rewarding it is to me and to the utilities to be able to provide this sort of service to the communities. And I think since you all have been demoing this, you've had a few outages. and you've been kind of able to see a little bit firsthand how that works. And so that's just a very, very brief overview of who I am, where we are, and how far this has come in the past year, and where it's heading. I believe is gaining more utilities and helping more communities across Missouri and the surrounding states. So the overall goal of Hometown Grid would be to be able to handle as many customer reports as you could during an outage. So let's say half the town is down, or the whole entire town is experiencing a power outage. Then everyone would be able to communicate through this system and be able to report their outage and submit that, and it would automatically show up onto the dashboard here. And I can show you this community here, Russellville, Kentucky. They signed up for Hometown Grid 2 weeks before the biggest outage they've had in 25 years. And can you see my screen right now?
No, we see the map of Salem.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. How about now?
Nope. There we go. Electric plant board?
Yeah.
Okay.
So this was Russellville, Kentucky, and they've got 4,500 customers. And as I mentioned, they signed up for Hometown Grid 2 weeks before the biggest outage they've had in 20 to 25 years. And so they didn't have time to, send out mailers or anything like that to even tell people about Hometown Grid. But what they did do was they added a prompt to their phone system. So when you called in to the number everybody's used to calling into, it would say, please press 1 to report your outage, or if you would like to report an outage. And as soon as they pressed 1, it would go to, and in your all's case, it would go to this number right here. So it would automatically redirect the line to that number, and in that case, they could be sent a text message if they chose that, or leave a voicemail. And so I want to show you the report from this outage that lasted several days. And all they had to do was click a few buttons and run the report. And this is all customer generated information right here. So the customers can text in their images, they can text in obviously anything that's going on with the outage. And this is the report they ran after the outage was over and all the power was restored. But I would say this is probably the most well-documented outage in Kentucky's history because it recorded every single text message, every single voicemail, and the utility company didn't have to do anything to gather this information. And they didn't miss any of it because they weren't having to decline phone calls, or nobody had to wait on hold or anything like that. It was all customer generated. And so it goes on and on. There are over, I guess there are around 1,000 outages here that are documented throughout those several days. So at 80 to 85 to 90% of customers will text. Anywhere between 80 to 90% will text, and then about 10 to 20% will leave a voicemail. And I'll show you this real quick. So over here on the left-hand side, you can see the communication back and forth between the utility and the power company. So I would text in, or any customer would text in, my power is out. Or in your all's case, with water issues as well, you can say I'm having water pressure issues, and then you get a quick response, and then you'll give your address, and it will kind of ask you some questions and walk you through that, and it will automatically pinpoint that outage on the map, as you can see here. So in this case, you also have the weather radar that you can look at, and here's a larger outage during a storm in one of the communities that's using this. And here are some of the other outages showing up on the map. Another large storm event. This is Madisonville, Kentucky, and they have AMI, but in this storm, their AMI system went down, completely went down, but Hometown Grid was solid the entire way through, so they didn't really miss a beat at all. And this really was kind of built to where if companies don't have AMI, then this kind of takes the place of that for outage notifications and outage management. And some companies even that do have AMI use this only for their outage management system. So here's the dashboard. When customer alerts come in and meter alerts come in, they would show up on the dashboard here. And just another example of the communication that is back and forth between the customer and the utility. So the customer sent this message up here, and the utility sent this one back. And you can also leave voicemail. So customers who choose to leave a voicemail and not text can do that, and their voicemail will show up on the dashboard. It'll be transcribed, and it also prioritizes each message to where if there's a line down or a wreck or anything like that, it'll put one of these icons beside it saying this is urgent and it needs to be reviewed immediately. And you can toggle those to where you can just see only the high priority ones if you want. And customers can text in images just from their phone, so they don't have to sign up for this. They don't have to go through any hoops to register or anything like that. They just have to know this phone number or just your phone number, and if you redirect it to this one, that's all they have to know. Do you all have any questions so far? I'm going real fast. These calls, they go very quickly, so I'm trying to get through this very quickly so you can ask as many questions as you need to.
So I'll just share quickly with the group, John. So I have on my phone, and I don't have a problem passing it down, where we were testing this previously when he did a demo with staff. And so you'll see in the green are my texts. I just sent a text to the number, said my power's out, and then you'll see the responses that it generates. That way you guys can get an idea. So we tested it several different times, and so you can kind of see what's going on there.
Now, he mentioned something about water. What are we using it for?
Right now, we're just using it for power outages.
Power outage?
Yes.
Okay.
So water is an option. So, part of this presentation is so that you all can afterwards have a discussion, about whether you want, or whether we think it's a good idea to pay for this service for the city. Okay? And so just using it for electrical outages is one option, and that's one set of costs. There's an additional cost for water, and there's an additional cost if we connect it to our AMI system. I know right now, staff, we don't recommend connecting it to the AMI right now, but to use it separately, just as John mentioned, that's what a lot of communities are doing, to use it as a separate system just for outages. So those are options that we'll be able to discuss.
Yeah, and if I can jump in for a second there on that subject, it works so well without the AMI. And I actually recommend that companies kind of start out sometimes without, if they do have AMI, to start out without it, because it really works extremely well without it. So this one right here, the one that I showed you, this report, they didn't have AMI at all. So this is only customer reported outages. This is no meter reported outages, and they didn't even need AMI throughout this entire thing.
Right.
Because of Hometown Grid.
And if I can add real quick, John, unfortunately on the screen that they're all able to see, things are a little blurry. And so that report that he's showing, it documents the date, the time, all of the details, where the call's coming in from, it notates the address that it collects from the customer, and then the details that they send, as well as, you can see images if they texted those to us as well. One of the other things is that if we had a FEMA event, so like the flooding that happened first part of November, and if folks were calling in at that time and reporting outages, we could download that report and send that straight to FEMA. We wouldn't have to compile data. It would be right there about the outages that we had.
And it goes straight to FEMA?
Well, we could send it straight to FEMA, yeah. I mean, we wouldn't have to do additional compiling of data.
Now, he was showing about maps of where the outages. Would we be able to see this?
Yes.
It wasn't
Yes.
coming to me.
Yes, anyone can go. We have the site. It's already live for Salem. That's what he's showing right here. You can go to hometowngrid.com/Salem. And that brings you that screen right there. It has the text or phone number there in the red. So that's live now. We have that linked on our Facebook page right now as one of the websites available. And so, like I said, during the test phase, we're hesitant to push it out a lot more, but, I mean, we have done Facebook posts that we're doing this and sent this information out. So yes, anybody can go there and see in live, real time, whenever there are outages and where those outages are in town.
Okay, what is the procedure now before where we're at right now? How does it proceed?
So without Hometown Grid, you mean?
Yes, exactly.
So if you have an outage and it's after hours, you need to call the police department's non-emergency line. And so that's the procedure. So then that would go to our police dispatch, and then they would call our on-call electric
Okay.
person, electric crew person.
So it goes through 2 or 3 persons, whereas this
This
is
would-
automated.
Yes.
Imagine.
And the other thing is, if we had a huge power outage all at once in a large part of town, dispatch could be flooded with calls and couldn't necessarily capture all of them. You start getting a busy signal potentially. This, you won't get a busy signal.
So this would notify,
So right now, the way we have it set up is it would go to the PD anyway, but it'd be one call,
okay.
okay? And that way they have the on-call list. If we had a phone that rotated among staff for on-call, then we could just send it to that number, but that's not how we do that. So, but again, it's one call going into dispatch as opposed to everyone in town calling dispatch.
Okay.
So
And then from dispatch, it goes to home.
they call the on-call electric crew person.
Okay.
Yeah, and here's the screen too, where you can add the on-call users to
Right.
where you could have to go directly to whoever you needed
Right.
needed it to. In this case, you got the dispatch.
Yes.
And I'll go ahead, Sally.
Oh, no, go ahead, John.
I was going to mention too, I'm not sure, we've talked about this before or if you've told them, but so as I mentioned, there are several communities in Missouri starting to use this. And so Waynesville, I don't know who all's closest to you all, but
Well, Rolla is,
Rolla,
yes.
okay, yeah, Rolla, and they're the ones that are saying, just tell anybody at all to talk to them and if they have any questions about Hometown Grid, because they absolutely love it. They're one of the first ones in Missouri to try it back in September, and it's just worked extremely well there and everywhere else. But they are big advocates, and they say if you have any questions at all, to make sure to ask them about it. Rodney and Jason and Chad over there in Rolla, and then Waynesville and St. Robert, they're trying it out as well. Waynesville is rolling it out for sure, and St. Robert heard about it from Waynesville, so it's spreading very quickly. And yeah, it changes, it's transformative overnight for you all and for the community, and it's been a huge help. So that's, like I said, I'm trying to watch the time, because I know that I don't want to take too much of your all's time.
Gotcha. Can I mention one more thing, John?
Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
So one of the other things that I know happens every time we have a power outage, I see the Facebook posts about, well, what caused it? And everybody wants to know what caused it.
Our
So
family squirrel.
well, a lot of times it is squirrels, unfortunately, but.
Rocky.
But what this does is, especially through the text, and I'm sure through the phone also if someone calls, but through the text, as it's asking you questions, so you just text, my power's out. So it responds back, okay, thanks for contacting us. Can I get a little bit of information from you? And it asks, what's your address? So you put in your address. It asks, are there any obvious causes? Did you see anything happen? And if so, you respond with what you saw. It asks, can you take a picture and send it in? And so as soon as it finds out, as soon as the system knows what's caused it, it will let the others that have texted in know what caused it. Is that right, John?
That's very, very close.
Okay.
What I was going to mention there is you all, once you know what's caused it, what's going on, you can draw this, it's very easy to draw this box around this, let's say this area right here is out. And so you all can go in and say, crew's been dispatched, and it was,
Is a squirrel an option?
yeah, wildlife interference.
Okay, there you go, wildlife interference. We have that regularly, so.
Yeah.
Can we
Yeah,
start
so then
naming
you
the
would-
squirrels?
Then it would go out to anybody.
Gotcha.
I didn't hear that.
Oh, no,
Yes.
she was joking. She asked if we could start naming the squirrels, so.
So whenever you did that right there, and keep in mind too, like that's the first thing that I've had to do as the utility, and I don't have to do that. But let's pretend that you've got half the town out right now. You all haven't had to answer a single phone call
Right.
so far with half the town out. And the first thing that I've done as the utility is, other than just look at the map on my phone or on the computer is create that box. And then when I hit submit, that's going to send that out to anybody that's texted in that area. And it's going to tell them, here's what's going on. And it will also give that message to anybody who texts in later. So if anyone texts in after you draw that and put those details in there, they're going to get that information as well. So Sally, you were very, very close. You know, and I am working on that part where it can kind of gather an overview based on the data that people are giving, the information people are giving, to create kind of that summary of what, you know, kind of what you were talking about there. So yeah, this is a huge deal to be able to update the customers that quickly, just within seconds. You can, you know, it's 2 o'clock in the morning, you're asleep, you get a notification on your phone, you can draw that box, send out that notification, and then everybody that texts in later and before will know exactly what's going on.
Okay, 2 things. I probably would not have a clue of why my electricity went out.
Right, and that's
Would that be
fine.
a problem?
No, you just respond back, I don't know.
Okay,
Because
Yeah.
it'll ask that of everyone who texts in.
okay. And then secondly, do you get an update back? If I was one that my electric went out, and would I get updates via text back?
Like, what kind of updates are you?
Like-
I mean,
Working on it, or you're
Oh,
gonna be
yeah.
out for 24 hours, or, hey, it's up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even though the electric went on, which is obvious, but,
Yeah, the answer to your question is yes. As long as the utility, as long as somebody there kind of put it in that information, you can say be back by midnight.
What is, and this is probably for you, Sally, what is the need for it now? In other words, what do we do? How many calls do we get now? What is it something that we need, that we could use? Can we, that's where I
gotcha.
don't know if you're getting my,
I-
is it something that's worth spending the money on for the city?
Well, I guess my question back to you and the other members of the committee would be, we talk a lot about communication and communication avenues.
True.
And so this is a communication avenue to get information back to our customers in a timely fashion, and in a way that we don't have to have multiple staff up in the middle of the night every time we've got an outage who aren't related to the electric crew. And so it would give folks information in real time.
But then this also, as I'm looking at this, if I'm looking at it right, we're looking at, you know, a bulk of money to be paid down, and then it's so much a month. You know, that's where I'm,
I've got
Gotcha.
I can try to clarify what I've understood so far. So I like the idea of the map. I think it'd be very nice to have the map so you can actually see what parts of town, even for the utility crews, you can pinpoint a bit where the issues are coming from. You know, they could use it as well, I think. I don't know if you guys have taken a look at this, Steve, or not, but being able to see like, oh, you know, this block is out of power, there's probably a transformer. If they heard loud booms, they would get that information. It would be available to not just the people
Right.
in the area, but it would also be available to our crews.
Yes, it could assist our crews in troubleshooting
Yeah,
what's
so
going on.
troubleshooting that as well, especially if we had something major go out, like during the parade last year when the reclosure went out, and, you know, a bunch of stuff went haywire, and it was like everybody was at the parade, so they were probably getting sporadic calls, and a lot of things were happening all at once. The pricing, I had a question, I'm kind of curious on, because I noticed.
can I interrupt you
Yeah,
for a
what's up?
second before we go to pricing?
Sure.
Chief Chase, can you give off the top of your head, do you get a lot of calls? Yeah. And would this help?
Yeah.
No,
We
it's,
can't hear you.
Sorry.
I think from anecdotally, from what I've heard, the city's had issues in the past when something happens, a bunch of people flood the phone lines, flood the call centers
I
and
would
stuff like
assume.
that, and you get busy signals. I've heard from online people getting busy signals, like trying to report in
Yeah.
things, so I
I
think.
just
it-
would have,
Yeah,
you know,
Well, that's, I
coming
think,
from
that's where
him.
my question was actually going too. is
Okay.
What do we do now, or how much would we use this?
And would it be beneficial?
Absolutely, it'd be beneficial to us. There's been times where we've had significant power outages, and it all kind of depends on where it occurs. The 19 North feeder, if something up 19 North happens, it cuts out half a town. And so in instances like that, we've had all 4 phone lines ring for 30 minutes straight. And so, and there's still all of the other issues you have, nobody has power. So if there are people that have medical emergencies that are on oxygen, require life-saving measures in their home, then they can't get through because we don't, and I mean,
Nobody, yeah.
there's no way to get through to us, no way to communicate that. They can go to 911, but then that still has to come in. And then we've gotten to points where we've had to bring officers in off the road to answer the phone because, I mean, if you've never had 4 phones ringing at one time, and I mean ringing constantly for a half hour straight, you've never really experienced like the 7th corner of,
Yeah,
so.
okay.
But yeah, it would be very beneficial to the city as a whole and to the police department because it streamlines things for us.
Okay, well, and that's what I figured, I hoped you would say, but, like I said, everything comes at a cost too.
It does.
And so that's where I was
And I'll
trying to look at that.
ask about that. I was also going to ask about, Mr. Pettit, is that what it is? Or-
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. When it comes to the calling and things like that, like text messages can be kind of, answered by this system. It seems like probably if you get 1,000, if you get 100 text messages, it'll line things up and it'll eventually respond to all of those. I could see where that happens, but we're still limited by the amount of call-in lines by that, or is that correct? Or is that, so if we
Not if they
have,
call this, not if they call this number.
okay, so there's a different, so this would
No,
be a
it's the
different
same
number
number.
than our typical, what we have now.
Correct. And it's
Okay.
on the bottom, and I realize you
Yeah,
can't see it from there.
I see the red button and everything
Yeah.
where it says call this. I didn't know if
Right.
that was our number that we have currently set up where it's kind of the same lines or systems, or if that was a new number that would be able to take
It's a new number.
additional volume.
It's a new
Is
number.
it automated?
Yes.
Like
Okay.
you call it in and it'll say blah, 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 blah.
Robocall or something.
John can probably answer that better than I can. I've only texted into it. So the question was,
Yeah.
John, go ahead. Is it automated if they call in?
Yes, yeah, and if you call in and it'll say, thank you for calling City of Salem Power Outage Hotline, we're here to help. If you'd like to report your outage by text, please press 1. And if you press 1, which most people do, it's going to immediately send you a text message to start the conversation. And it's extremely easy. Like I said, that's how this report was generated, was people doing that. They calling the number they've been used to calling forever. And if they couldn't get through to that one because of what you're talking about with the line limit, then they just go to the outage map and call that number. And that's so then they would say it says press 2 if you'd like to report your outage by voicemail, and that's when it would record the voicemail. And this is what it would look like on the screen here. You would be able to listen to it and be able to literally read the voicemail transcription. So, and I'll just real quick, and I won't talk too much about the cost effectiveness. I think it, but I'll say this Russellville, the one that had that major outage, he said it paid for itself for the entire year, every month, every payment, all the down payment, the upfront from this one outage. He said it was without a doubt. And he said there's no way in the world they could have hired enough people to handle this outage like this did. They didn't have to do anything. He said it was crickets because it was handling it the entire time for him. And so, and really one of the coolest things, and this goes beyond, like I don't really feel like I'm selling a product at all. This is a community service, and there's no doubt about that, because what I've seen here is you know, you'll have elderly people in the community that will text in, you know, I'm afraid of the dark. When the night starts to come, I'm scared of that. And this will respond to them within seconds, kind of with a comforting message of, well, we're on the case, we're looking into it, we're, you know, and so you're able to, I guess you can't really put a price on that, is what I'm thinking, and what I've seen from these other communities. And I think that's why these towns are signing up so quickly, is because of that sort of kind of invaluable aspect to it, to the community. And what you mentioned too, the scrambling of trying to answer the phones like that during an outage, that goes away overnight once this is implemented. In a big outage and even in a small outage, a squirrel gets in a transformer and a city, you know, a block goes out, then this handles all the phone calls and the text messaging. So yeah, it's been transformative. And do you all have any more questions at all? Like I said, I want to be really sensitive about the time, because I can talk about this for like 2 hours.
Questions about
So I have to
program
watch
itself?
myself.
What about the pricing?
Pricing?
Yeah, I think
Yeah, go over the pricing to us.
Yeah,
Okay.
I was gonna ask about that really quick, and I was just, because I think I understand the pricing here, but I was just gonna
31.
do a question really quick. I see, so there's flex, balanced, and strategic. 3 different pricing options. I noticed that they are all the same cost. It's just a difference in the monthly versus the upfront cost over a period.
Yeah.
So like over 5 years, each one of the programs would cost $3,800 or $38,000, or about $600 or $7,600 per year. And that's
Yeah.
just for the licensing and the upfront fee, right? That is just that part. So after that comes how many texts and calls and everything else are received. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yes.
okay, so if you have, so that doesn't include any messages. So if you have somebody send in, let's say you have 20 people send in 30 messages or something like that for, or back and forth. Is it a cost for the messages for every message it sends out, or every message received and it sends? Is my question.
It's an average of all of them. So you can kind of, and I have those tallies, and you can look at it under reports every month, and I send those, and you can see exactly how many messages were sent. Let's see here.
Okay.
Yeah, so on each one of those, and so I'll give you an idea real quick. On a town your size, most months you're going to pay under $50 for that 4.5 cents per message fee. Now, Russellville, Kentucky, the one that I keep going back to this outage,
We don't have.
this entire outage, they paid $595 for messaging fees that month, and there were 13,000 or more text messages sent and received,
I thought it was like 30.
and phone calls.
Yeah,
And
$50.
so that's like I said, that's a once in a 15, 20-year outage. And so I would say most months it's going to be $20 to $50 at the most for you all even during decent sized outages. And if you have a major outage, it could be several $100s, but this one lasted 4 or 5 or 6 days. So it just kind of gives you an idea of the potential cost there with that 4.5 cents. And just to let you know too, that 4.5 cents includes the messaging fees, but it also includes the AI fees, the language model fees, and the geocoding fees. So basically I split it up to 1.5 cents per service. So the conversational language model, the text messaging, and the phone calls, and the geolocation that places it on the map. Those are 3 services that I have to pay for to make this all work. And I just literally don't make anything on that each month. And sometimes I'll lose money on that. In a big month, I'll lose money on those. I just try to pass those along to you all to pay that fee.
So there's no difference in terms of features provided between flex, balanced, and strategic. It's just the pricing plan.
Yeah, and that
Okay.
was really, when I first started pricing it, I just had one option. And the utility started asking for the higher upfront so they could get the lower monthly payment. And so then that's the only reason those are offered there, because some utilities want to do the flex, some want to do the strategic, some want to do the balance, just depending on budget.
So the only difference between the three is the more you pay up front, the cheaper it is per month. That's
Yeah,
the
and
only
that- and you're,
difference.
yeah, and you're right about the 5 years. But if you calculate that after 7 years or 8
It
years,
starts getting cheaper.
it's way, way cheaper. And now, obviously, it doesn't matter to me, whichever one you choose, but I think that's one reason why some of these companies wanted that option, because on the strategic, you're saving several $1,000s if you use it for more than 5 years, which I would anticipate most companies will, because, but it's whatever. And some companies have just said, well, since there's no contract, that's another thing I want to make sure I mention, there's no long-term contract at all. So let's say you want to do the flex option and you just pay that and you're like, we don't like this after a month or two, then you don't pay me anything else after that. That's all. And there have been a few that have done that, or they have stopped using it, but they chose the flex option because it's the lowest risk possible.
Hey, John, I got a question. So
Yeah.
we have it for our current updated accounts that we have through the city for this pricing. I was wondering what the additional cost is if we go over the amount of customer base that we have right now for your pricing.
How many electric customers do you have?
Well, you're basing it on 2,639.
Okay. And I mean, are you saying that there are more than that?
No, I'm just saying if there's any additional customers while we still have this service, what's the additional cost per customer?
Oh, okay. No, it really is just going to stay at that unless your town like doubles in size or something in the next few years. But that price is really what it will stay at unless there's, like I said, if your town doubles, which I wouldn't anticipate that it would, but
Nice, but
You never know.
Okay.
Are there additional questions for Mr. Pettit?
It says 5 years. Do you have to pay this full amount again every 5
No,
years?
no. So the question, John, was, do we have to do this full amount and go 5 years? My understanding is that it is a
No.
month to month, correct?
that's correct.
Okay, so that's a
there's no-
one-time upfront.
could you start out with a flex and then change to a balanced or a strategic? Let's say we just,
Yeah, like after a year, like you use
Yeah.
it for a year and then
yeah,
yeah, I'm flexible on that because I've thought about that. There's another company who mentions, or it's a
Yeah.
kind of a different scenario, but yeah, it would actually, I would definitely be open to that. So yeah, I'm very flexible on the pricing. I wanted to make this as affordable and as easy to use as possible. So yeah, I'd be willing to talk about that.
okay.
Are there
Okay.
additional charges in
Yeah, according to the
addition
service agreements, it just shows a 2-year
Percent.
commitment initially,
with
and you
this
could change.
that we have to-
At least on the sample that you gave us, the service commitment says 2 years.
Rate locked for 24 months.
Yeah, rate locked for 24 months with a 5% cap
Okay.
per year thereafter with a 30-day notice. So just.
Yeah,
Okay,
if I even raise the price at all, but
Yeah.
but I just kind of have to put that in there just to make sure I'm covered for inflation and stuff. But
yeah, that makes sense.
yeah, but that 2 years is not, as you probably understand, it's not. You don't have to use it for 2 years. That's just the rate is locked at that for 2 years.
What is,
Unless we agree, unless you after a year you're like, hey, can we talk about moving to the strategic? Then I'm like I said, I'm very flexible on all of that.
what is the Missouri Electric Commission discount, that 20%? What does that run? Do you know? Does it-
Yeah, and I was going to show you, Sally. I'm not sure the exact. I think I might have sent you that price I can't remember the exact pricing that you have in front of you.
Well, it says that that this pricing includes that discount, which is the flex. Do you want me to read off what you have as the prices?
Yeah.
Okay, so for the
Actually,
flex,
I'm going to show you what the. Hold on one second. Is it different than this? From what I
3,000.
remember, it might be different than this. I kind of.
nope, it's the
Can't
same.
see that.
It's the same. On strategics, the 20,000, 20,400 and then 294 monthly is what you sent us.
Yeah. Okay. So that didn't include the water, I think, on your list.
Right, it's just electric.
Okay. Right, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so the MAC discount, so right here basically is the same. And now if we just did electric, then those prices would match what you're seeing, you know?
Right.
So.
So
yeah,
when,
and-
sorry, John, when cities use it for water, what are they reporting for water? I mean, it's not going to be an outage, right?
Right, typically it'll be my water pressure's low, or I've been surprised at how many times somebody says, hey, there's water running down the street,
Okay.
into a ditch.
Okay.
And it's just coming up, and that really happens, more often than I would have thought.
Gotcha, okay,
So that kind of thing.
okay,
And it's been a big deal, very beneficial. Some companies, though, they start out without the water, and I kind of recommend starting out just with power at first. And because the water is only 1 cent per customer per month extra,
right,
if you want to add that on. But and I'm starting to add street department over there too, like street and snow over here.
oh, wow,
And so that's going to be really cool. And also street lights. That's been kind of a utility request for several utilities have said, hey, we'd rather not get woken up at 3 in the morning because of a street light. And so I've built that into it to where customers can report a street light. And if you have just a second while I'm thinking about it, just cut off those. You can enter, I don't know how many cutoffs or disconnects you have a month,
Other than the
but
4.5
you can
cents.
enter in the addresses for those
no,
disconnected
Just 4.5
accounts.
cents.
And when they
Yeah.
text in,
I
it's
mean,
going to automatically
I
give
don't
them
have
that
a
message
different
they've been
amount.
disconnected for non-payment.
and that wouldn't go straight to the consumer. I mean, it'd go to the city,
Okay,
and it'd be wrapped in
Okay.
total rates.
it's only 4.5 cents. The cost.
I'm satisfied with the information we've got.
Okay.
Yeah, and my apologies, everyone, we do have our next presenter who's waiting, and we're
Okay.
running a
Oh,
little over.
yeah.
And I don't know if you guys have additional questions, if we want to kind of formulate those, and I can send them to John, and
I
we can,
just want to know what it's going to cost our customers, but we can talk about that.
right,
Later.
right. Because it would be rolled into the overall rate for electric utility.
Right, but I just want to know what that is going to cost us,
Okay.
cost them. But I'm assuming we can talk about that
Right,
later,
yeah,
not while he's up
right.
there.
And while we have the other next one waiting, so.
Right.
So, okay. Any other final questions for John, or?
Not that much.
No? Okay. You have any final things, John?
No, just thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Thank
spending
you.
the time with us, and hopefully things go well with that other community, so.
Thank you. Y'all have a good night.
All right, you too. Thanks, John.
No, I was looking at that too. Part of the deliverance group.
Alderwoman Dent, do you mind if we take a quick, maybe 5-minute recess, so
That's
that I
fine.
can get things reset for the next presenter?
Okay, we'll take a 5-minute recess to get ready for the next presentation.
Okay, so gentlemen, we're coming back into session. So real quickly, I'll just share with the board and the committee members who are here this evening. So this cost of use study, this is one of the first steps to the rate study. So we've been working on this with UFS for the last several months. Staff has been. This is a rate study that is paid for through our membership through MPEP and MPUA. And so the purpose of a rate study is to help us determine what our rates should be. So this is for the electric utility only. In the past, we do a calculation each year, but we've not had a deep dive rate study done for quite some time here in Salem. So they will be looking at all aspects of our electric rates. They will be looking at not just the kilowatt hour rate, but should there be other fees? What should the demand rate be that large electric consumers get? What should all aspects of that look like? And then they'll help explain to all of you what the different aspects mean and why they're built that way. And then I believe they will also have some questions for all of you that will help feed what that ultimate rate should look like that they'll be proposing later on.
Okay.
Okay? So I guess if we can quickly go through, do you want to start, Alderwoman Dent, you're introducing yourself to the gentleman so that they know who else here?
I'm Catherine Dent. I'm the West Ward Alderwoman and Chair of the Utility Committee.
Trina, do you want to go next? We'll go that way first.
I'm Trina Pott. I'm member of the Utility Committee.
I'm Harold Hamilton. I am a member of the Utility Committee.
Kyle Williams, also a member of the committee.
Okay.
And David Weiss, a member of the committee. West Ward Alderman John Whalen.
Mayor of Salem, Greg Parker.
And then we also have with us this evening Alderman Bolerjack and Alderman Letchworth. Okay? And I think at this point, we will let you take it away, gentlemen.
Great. Well, thank you for all the introductions. My name is Bob Blank, and I have Dan Casbon with me. We are from Utility Financial Solutions, and we've been working with staff on conducting this rate study and financial projection, and excited to go with you. We'll go through the financial projection and those key financial targets that we strive for and what those revenue requirements are made up of. The next piece would be the cost of service study on what the cost is to serve each of your different rate classes and different customer types. And we can identify if there's any subsidies going on within classes and within the classes and how to address those, and then our recommendations on our findings of the best way to move forward and with your guys' help as well. So every projection is made up of some assumptions, and these are ones that we've reviewed with the staff. First one being inflation. It's come down over the past couple of years, and we're settling back down on the 3.2% for growth. Whether there might be more meters on your system and growing that way, there's no growth foreseen for the kilowatt hour usage and purchasing. So with the efficiencies of newer homes and newer appliances, you may be getting more meters on your system, but the kilowatt hours are not increasing. For your purchase power with MPUA, we do have a 1% increase on those projecting out. The investment income of 0.5% on all of your cash accounts, on the interest that you're gaining on those. The capital improvement plan looking out 5 years. This was provided to us in detail from the utility with bucket trucks and tree trimming and all your outlook projects for the past 4 years. And then this last line is kind of related to that capital program. So right now your system is 77% depreciated, which the average utility is around 50%. So your system is showing on the older side. But with your improved or your higher capital plan, you can see what that is doing to your system. By reinvesting in it, it's drawing that down more towards that average 50%, which is good that you're reinvesting in the system. Are there any questions on the assumptions that we're using?
No.
Or anything for more clarification? No, very good.
No.
So this is our projection summary, which has our three key financial targets. First being the debt coverage ratio here in green. And we like to strive for a 1.4. And you can see that you're well above that at 11 and in the double digits. So that's a very healthy target. The next one we look at is our cash. And we have a recommended minimum cash of 1.6 million. And you can see in the all green again, you are well above that at almost 4 million and increasing throughout the projection period. And our final target is the operating income. And this is our optimal operating income. And we'll discuss these targets in more detail in these upcoming slides. But once again, you're showing that you're well above that target. And this is all with no rate adjustments looking out for the projection period. Are there any questions with this table? There's a lot of numbers on here, but a lot of good information. We'll break it down in more detail with these targets in the upcoming slides.
Continue on.
So first with the debt coverage ratio, this is how we're developing that. A lot of 1.2 is usually what the bond covenants like to keep, and we add a little safety factor of 0.2 in there. But we're taking the net income and adding in your depreciation and also that interest expense from your loan that I believe you took out in 2017. And that won't fall off until 2038, I believe.
That's correct.
Okay. Yep, so very healthy on this target. The minimum cash reserve, the first item here is your operating O&M, and we're taking less your depreciation, and that's $5.5 million, and this 16.4% is a 60-day working capital lag. So we want to make sure that to cover all your daily expenses, so when you're sending out your bills to all your customers, and by the time you get all that revenue back, we have a 60-day working capital lag, so we want to make sure we have that money on hand to keep operations moving. The next item is the historical rate base. This is your total asset that's listed on your depreciation schedule. And since you're on the older side, we develop a risk factor for any catastrophic events of 3% to get repairs underway. If there's a hurricane or flooding or ice storm that knocks things out, this is to get repairs underway, not necessarily to fund the entire repair, but this is to get things moving until other financial arrangements can be made. For your debt service payment, we want to make sure that we have all that cash on hand for the whole year to make that payment. And then the last item is the capital improvement plan, and we've normalized that over the 5-year period. So we've taken 1/5 of that, 20%, and we want to make sure we have that cash on hand so that we're not sacrificing investing back in the system with our capital projects.
Okay, Bob, if I can interject real quick here for the board. So when he talks about the debt payment, the debt service, and on the previous slide, he was talking about also the oh gosh, now I just lost it. The debt coverage. What he's referring to there is the COP that was taken out to install the AMI system. Okay, so that's what he's referring to.
No, thank you for the clarification.
Sure.
So with all those numbers added together, we're our minimum recommended cash reserve is 1.6 million, and your projected cash is again at almost 4 million. So well above that minimum. And I also included in here what Salem's minimum cash reserve policy is, and that's 25% of the prior year's expenditures, and then once they hit that 25%, then the extra 5% to the depreciation and repair fund can be added on. So our minimum cash level policies are very similar in that. So I just wanted to show that piece. There's a lot of detail in this slide. Do you have any questions on how we're coming up with those allocators or any of these numbers?
We're good, I think.
Yeah, not at this point.
And our last target is the optimal operating income. And this is so that our ratepayers are properly funding the infrastructure that they're using. And so an example would be if you're buying a $1 million asset and you're going to depreciate that over 20 years, in 20 years when that asset is fully depreciated, that asset is no longer going to cost $1 million. It's going to cost $1 million plus whatever that inflationary increase is. So this is targeted to recover and recoup that inflationary increase on those assets. And since you are more on the depreciated side, it is driving this operating income level lower, but you have a very healthy operating income currently. I know in your past with your historical data in 21 and 2022, there were some losses on those operating incomes, but that has turned around and we're projecting very healthy operating incomes. So before we move to the cost of service, is there any questions on the financial projection piece? Oh, very good. So with the cost of service, that really we want to identify if there's any subsidies going on within the classes and across the classes as well. So intra and infra subsidies. The optimal, and we'll also discuss all the detail of what goes into the fixed charge and variable charges of the availability fee, distribution charges, and what the power supply charges would be. So the cost of service is really a snapshot in time of this year. So it'll be ever changing, but this is more of a guide for us to look at on how to move forward with addressing some subsidies in the class. So these numbers of being really negative or positive, it's more of a snapshot. We use it as guidance in moving forward. So for the residential class, you can see our projected revenues are about $3.3 million, and the cost to serve that class would be about $2.7 million. And down commercial is actually at 1.2, where the cost to serve them would be about 1.3. So to meet cost of service, they would need a 2.8% increase. And then for the demand rate, they're very similar with the residential at that 19% below. So with looking at this effective change, we already know from looking at your finances that you don't need a rate increase with looking at your key financial targets. So with developing a revenue neutral adjustment of 0, this is an example of how we can move these classes closer to cost of service while addressing these subsidies that are happening within these classes. So with a bandwidth of 1%, so no class could see more than a 1% increase, and no one could see less than a 1% decrease in their rates. And this is just an example. We can discuss this and when we get into the rate design portion later. But for residential, with a 0.2% of a decrease, as well as demand, and the commercial seeing a 0.8% increase, we are coming out with the exact same revenue while addressing these and moving these towards cost of service so that the rates are fair and equitable and they're recovering where there should be.
Any questions? Okay, I think we're good so far.
Okay, great. Talking about the availability fee, really the importance of this is to recoup all the fixed costs that are incurred by your system and within your operations. There's always going to be a cost to install the meters, to read the meters, to bill the customers, and we also build in a portion of that distribution system that we call a min system, where if you were to if everyone were to buy 1 kilowatt hour, there's a system that has to be built to get everyone that 1 kilowatt hour. And system or service drops are already also built into these costs. So our goal with that availability fee is to recover all those fixed costs that are being incurred by the customers. So with that, these are what kind of happens with those, where increasing those availability fees helps minimize the risk for the utility of having a cold summer. And if you have a rate, which you currently do, that's all kilowatt hours, on a cold summer, you might not sell as many kilowatt hours as you planned on, and that way you're going to under recover on all of your revenues. And vice versa, if you had a really hot summer, you're going to be overcharging all of your customers for what they're actually using. By having availability fee, it will also reduce those subsidies within each class, where if you have all your year-round ratepayers paying for all those customers that may travel south to Texas or Florida or Arizona for a couple months at a time in the winter, well, when those people come back, they still expect to flip on the switch and have power. It doesn't keep you from having to maintain the system and everything else that you have to, that all those costs are still going to be incurring on your system, whether those customers are there or not. By having a fixed monthly charge, it will impact the low use customers, but often we find a misconception is that low use and low income are related, and it's actually the opposite, where those low income people have not as good of appliances. Their homes may be older, not as efficient. So often we see that they're actually higher users. So by having an all kilowatt hour rate, it's actually hurting them, and they're overpaying and subsidizing those low use customers. Are there any questions on these points, that the importance of that fixed cost recovery?
No, not at this point.
So looking at that availability fee of what the cost of service says it should be. So residential is around $13.50, commercial at $21.50, and that demand rate, those large demand customers, at $78.
I have a question. Who are the demand rate people?
So right now, those that are charged a demand rate are those that are using 25 or more kilowatts in a month within the last year.
Can you give me an
So generally, they're going to be businesses. We don't really see them on residentials. So businesses that have high power draws.
like Walmart maybe?
Yep, that would be an example. I mean, Walmart,
Craig.
Town and Country,
Okay.
yeah, US Foods, those types of businesses.
Versus commercial might be a
Flower shop.
flower shop,
Right,
hairdresser.
right, they're not going to
Okay.
use as much power, but they're going to be the large power users. That's,
Okay.
so that demand rate is to help offset because they're using so much more.
Okay, thank you.
I have a quick question for kind of both you, Sally, as well as Mr. Blank and Mr. I missed the last name. On the
Casbah.
Caswell. Okay. So, Sally, we have a minimum rate, do we not? Like you pay for an X amount even if you don't use any power, there's a minimum rate that we have.
Not for electric, no.
Not for electric.
Well, no, I take that back, there is.
I was going to say,
There
there's a
is.
minimum, I was going to say, I think
Oh.
there's a minimum when it comes to that.
There is, I can't think of what it is off
It's
the
like
top of my head.
200 watts, I think, is
I
what
think
you
it's
pay.
200
for.
First
kilowatts.
2 kilowatt hours for residential, and for commercial, it's the first 400.
There you go.
Yeah,
Yep, and then
so,
you
so there's
multiply
that.
by
With
the
that,
kilowatt hour charge.
so when you're talking about, you know, the service availability fee paying for something like, oh, well, what if everybody uses 1 kilowatt hour, you know, to pay for metering and everything else and the maintenance of those?
Right.
Would that minimum charge not take care of that?
I'm going to refer to these gentlemen.
It helps, but keep in mind when you give a minimum charge of, what Bob, you said the commercial had 400 kilowatt hours is a minimum. So if they use 300, you're going to charge them for 400. But essentially, that's helping cover your fixed costs, so you're giving them 300 kilowatt hours of power supply for free. So the minimum charge kind of gives that up to that minimum, that energy is free, because what this customer charge or facility charge is attempting to do is recover the fixed costs that the utility incurs regardless of how many kilowatt hour and regardless of the energy that a customer uses. If they use 0 kilowatt hours, we still incur an average cost of $13.50 per residential customer, because we're billing that customer, we're reading their meter, we're maintaining their meter, we're if they're not there, we're still maintaining all the infrastructure to provide power to
Power lines and
them,
everything.
reliable power.
Yeah,
So
I can
you're
understand.
doing all
like-
that work.
Yeah, you're still maintaining the connectivity to that as well, so I can understand
Yeah.
that. I was just curious, like, you know, I figured the minimum amount and the minimum charge, because, you know, they're paying for supposedly 300 or 200, you know, 300 on average, 200, 400 watts or kilowatts of electricity, but not actually receiving that. It's kind of the thought, and I figured that,
right,
that's the,
right.
you know, so, okay.
But they might have received almost up to that minimum. Right? So
Yeah,
think
I just
Bob-
don't, I just don't see a lot of, I can't imagine a lot of that besides like maybe some residential's extra garage or something like that using that. Any commercial business especially is probably not seeing that. You know, if you have a commercial business,
Right.
unless it's completely defunct building, which we do have. So, okay. Just, sorry, I'm kind of talking out loud as well and thinking out loud.
No, that's great. Great questions. And I think in some example rate designs Bob has, he does list that minimum on the sheet. I believe that's the case.
Yep.
But minimum can be confusing to our customers too. It can sometimes, we do work with some utilities that even staff aren't sure what the minimum means. And sometimes we end up finding out the minimum is really a fixed charge. So, yeah, we like to see a flat availability fee. There is a cost to being connected to your grid.
Okay.
So with the financials and the cost of service coming together, we've kind of recognized that there is not a need for an adjustment of revenue or an increase in revenue, but rather a revenue neutral adjustment where we can shift some of those components and even address the availability fee or the minimum charge. And this can be something done over time. We never want to see big impacts on our customers, as that's when you start getting calls and Gradual is what we like to see with implementing really any rate changes. So something I'd ask of you guys is, with giving a revenue neutral, is a bandwidth that I kind of discussed beforehand with up to 1% or down to a 1% decrease. Do you feel comfortable with using that as a bandwidth, or would 2%, or would you rather see each class have a revenue neutral adjustment on its own?
Wow.
I mean, what sounds
So-
more reasonable?
So as we currently have it, our rates, our electric rates for residential and commercial are identical. So it's the same kilowatt hour rate. The only difference is if they are a demand user, then they have a different kilowatt hour rate, but they're charged the demand rate also. So what he's asking here is, are you all interested and willing to look at a variable of 1 or 2% between those rates, between residential and commercial?
I think we've talked about that, but in the past, even to a certain degree, we just haven't
Gone that
moved
far,
on
right?
it.
Right.
We haven't recently, but we have that COS summary page that we did look at all of the, we had the number of accounts, the number
Right.
of usage, the number of estimated, I mean, we took deep dives in the past. We haven't changed it, we haven't split those differences.
Well, this shows how that we should, I mean, really.
Yeah, it does, it shows a relatively neutral thing, but do we want to? Is the question.
So I'll show you a couple, I threw an example rate design for each of these, just with this assumed adjustment with if there was a 1% bandwidth, just to show you what it's looked like. This is nothing finite. So for residential, currently without the availability fee and the 13.6 cent energy charge, by implementing that $8 availability fee back in and reducing that kilowatt hour charge with an overall adjustment of 0.2% decrease, this is what that would look like. Your average use, average customer use is 981 kilowatt hours per month. So that would put them right here between and this is per month, that this would impact their bill. So someone who's using 1,000 kilowatt hours a month would see a 40-cent decrease in their monthly bill. But also by adding in that availability fee charge, and right up front, you can see what that does with those low-use customers. It's a higher bill impact for them. Now, was this something that you got calls on before the availability fee was taken off the bill?
Are you asking, did we get calls on it?
Yes. Is that something people called to try to understand, or, what is this $8? Or was it not really
When we
a big
first
deal with
implemented
having
it?
that minimum?
So we first implemented it as a $10 service availability fee. I mean, there were calls because it was new. It's not something we'd had previously. Again, the inter-county electric that surrounds us, the cooperative that surrounds Salem, they do have a service availability fee. I think I'd mentioned that to you before when we spoke. It is considerably higher. So folks who migrate between county residents and city residents, they understood what it was. Some of our residents weren't as familiar with it.
Do you see by implementing that $8 again for residential, do you think that would cause an issue or a pushback on the consumer's end?
I'll let the committee.
Personally,
So the cost of
no.
service kind of shows $13, $13.50. So I mean, if you wanted a 5-year increment to slowly implement that back in, or if that's something that you're still interested in, just wanted to open that up for discussion.
So originally, I don't know how much you know about the history of our utility stuff, and our rate structures or anything, if you've looked in the past, because this came up initially, we implemented a service availability fee to try to build up reserves, and that's how it was built. We didn't necessarily use it in the same exact way that you were saying. We were building it up with reserves, and we had a sunshine of 1 year on it that we put in.
A sunset.
Sunshine, not sunshine, sunset of 1 year. After 1 year, we found we were still a little short on our electric reserve fund, so we kept it going for another year and ended up making the goal that we had as a city to have our reserves at, what was it, 25% or something? Anyways, with, and we initially implemented it as a, with the promise of sunsetting it whenever we made our electric reserve. We have done that, and we have recently gotten rid of that as of, I think, July or August. And essentially what you're asking us to do is reinstate that.
Right, but at the same time, lower the kilowatt hour
But
rate.
lower the kilowatt. I see what you're saying there. The last time we sunset this because we made that, but we didn't lower the rates because the rates were fixed to make up what we were trying to use. So that's I think the question I have. It's we were a little bit hesitant, and I'm a little bit hesitant in reinstating. I think if we did put in a service availability fee, we would need to talk about lowering the kilowatt hour usage rate for sure.
Most certainly.
Because we're going to get rid of this. Okay, well, we need 1 more year. Okay, now we've gotten rid of it as promised. Here it is again.
Yeah.
is kind of the
Right, which I thought could be a point of contention with, dropping it, then reinstating it.
Yeah.
But with keeping that minimum bill charge, that really is going to drive the fairness for those low use customers. And with lowering the kilowatt hour charge, you can see going from 200 to make up this same 2720, you'd only need 150 kilowatt hours to hit that minimum. And that includes with the availability fee. So if you wanted to change the text in, 150 instead of that 200 while adding it in, then that would help kind of mitigate those high impacts of those low use customers.
Yeah.
But I do see the hesitation of wanting to reinstate that availability fee right after.
After just dropping it. I will say, just as a point of info for the other committee members, we are, of the 15 utilities that I looked at, comparable to our size, we're the only ones without a service fee for residents. Starting at about $9 in Houston, I think, is the lowest, is what I see.
But I also hear we're one of the highest utilities in the state.
Yeah, this is the exact reason why. We are high on the kilowatt hour charge, but we also have 0 service fee. So that's the trade-off that we have right now.
And a lot of your fixed cost recovery is built into that kilowatt hour charge, which is why it's a lot higher than if it were just recovering your distribution.
Yeah, if you're looking at something like Intercounty Electric
power supply
nearby, they have a $40 service fee. 45 now, dollar service availability fee.
What's their per kilowatt?
It's about half of what we have.
Oh.
Yeah, it's 9.9, I think.
Something like that.
Yeah, I think last I checked for Intercounty, because I wasn't terribly long ago. Yeah, it's 0.93 with a $45 service availability charge.
Because it is long.
I got a question. What's the easiest way to cover your fixed costs, like for the maintenance and everything like that? Is doing it by charging by kilowatt hour, or separating your fixed costs with the service availability fee to cover that, and then adjusting your rates? Which one's the easiest or the best way to do it?
Well, you're still going to have the maintenance on the system,
Yeah.
whether they buy it or any kilowatt hours or not. So the best way would be to have it in that fixed cost recovery That way you know you're getting it, and it's just more stable of a revenue for the utility, something that you can count on.
Yeah, because I was thinking if you based it on the, just charging as high as what's being charged per kilowatt hour, that if there's a lack of recovery on the expenses for the power being paid for, that per your customer being used, that you're losing money for your current cost for like maintenance and stuff like that if you're charging by kilowatt hour.
And it makes you more susceptible to weather as well, where if you have that cold summer and you're not selling all the kilowatt hours for air conditioning, then you're drawing back money that you have to pay for your linemen and for your maintenance of your system, and it becomes more reliant on that. Over time, that becomes more of an issue, maybe not after 1 year, but that's the risk of having that all built into that kilowatt hour charge.
Now, this is Dan. I'm going to just kind of go the next step down the road where the industry is moving towards is the monthly facility charges. 90+% of the utilities out there have a facility charge or a customer charge, they call it. Ideally, for covering those distribution-related costs, when you really think about it, your business is to purchase and distribute power. That is, it includes infrastructure that you purchase and it's sunk costs. You put power lines in and transformers and substations. It's all sunk cost that has either a debt payment to it or you need to depreciate it over time. There's a cost of having that asset there and repairing it. Ideally, that distribution would be recovered through that facility charge and what we call a demand charge for distribution. So a distribution demand charge. That component, because a demand unit is the measure of the customer's load that they put on your system. And when your engineering goes out to put in a new transformer or size a line or size a substation, they're looking at the potential loads that are down that string. And they're looking at what those customers use for a load. So the more load a customer puts on the system, a demand charge will charge them more than a customer who puts less load on the system. When it's in energy, because we don't have a demand charge, we're pushing it here into the energy charge. So then it goes on to who purchases most kilowatt hours, the most usage. And sometimes those are your more efficient users of the system, the higher, they call it high load factor. The high load factor customers who are more efficient end up overpaying. And you can kind of see that in that chart where from the customer at 500 kilowatt hours is going to see an increase of $3.80, where the 1400 kilowatt hour customer is going to see a savings. And so that's, right now, that's telling us those high use customers are paying for those fixed costs that the low use customers are not paying for. So that's what the energy does. By having that third component, demand, it helps recover your fixed costs even in more of a, it's, I won't say more fixed, it's still a fixed recovery, but that demand charge is being implemented out there. But like I say, the availability fee, the majority of our industry has that as a charge.
Is this something that we could do in steps, like?
Well, if you'll direct your, can you hear? Ms. Potts'
Is
question.
this something we could do in steps, you know, like decrease our rate one time for however long, and then add that fee back on? Because like Kaya was saying, we just dropped it this past summer. Or is that pointless to do it that way?
Whenever you decrease your rates, you always know there's going to need to be an increase coming sooner than if you did, left them alone. This example here that Bob has is providing a 2% reduction on an average customer, okay? Not a lot. But looking at your financials, if you wanted to maybe just, I don't know if 1% is, enough to say, hey, we're giving you a reduction overall. A lot of times it's the timing of when you put a rate change in place. You don't want to go in June when everyone's power usage is going up. You want to kind of time it where, as a good time is at the end of summer, kind of in October, November, as their use is going down from the high use summertime, to put a rate change in place, because their bills are going down because their usage is going down. So sometimes timing is that can help quite a bit, but right now the way he has it set is there is a savings on the average customer.
To implement
I'll flip to
when?
commercial because it's very similar with the structure because of that same kilowatt hour charge. I didn't keep it the same for the proposed, just because the cost of service for these customers, they have different load profiles, they're different classes, they're different users. That flower shop is not using power the same way that a residential is.
And when were you talking about implementing?
That's up to us.
That's up to us. That's
Okay.
right.
Yeah, but as he stated, the recommendation is basically after our peak season.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
he mentioned after the summer season, which is kind
Right.
of how we've implemented, because with rates that go into effect with the July 15 through August 15 bill, which is, citizens don't, or customers don't get that until September, 1st of September. So that kind of does that. We actually peak in the wintertime, so that would be more a springtime type event.
January,
So,
February.
I mean,
Well, because I noticed, for residential, we're high with revenue, correct?
well, I mean, according to their charts, yes.
Yes.
A little higher, yes.
Yes, and then low with commercial.
Right. And so that's what they're
Yeah, they're
proposing.
proposing a 2%
is-
or 0.2%.
Right, that 2% margin, so a small decrease in residential and a small increase in,
Yeah.
but as he was just explaining,
I think it's fine.
okay, you're back on the residential screen. On the commercial side, it was a $12 service availability fee, not an $8.
Okay.
And
Okay.
so the rate still decreased, the kilowatt hour rate, but by a less margin.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm just thinking for financial shock, because we have a lot of low-income people here in Salem, starting out with a, the reduction in the rate, and I don't know what the time frame would be, and maybe it's in steps of the availability fee of,
But to keep us whole, we kind of need to do them, even if we do them in steps, we've got to do a step on the rate as well as a step up on the service availability fee at the same time. Otherwise,
If you don't, we're going to get ourselves back in the same place that we were, that we don't have.
Right.
We don't have an excess to
Yeah.
fund.
well, that, yeah.
I mean, that's the problem.
I don't know what it would look like if we just did the reduction, the 2% or 1% or whatever, and, what's that going to look like with the numbers? I mean, I didn't get a degree in numbers for a purpose.
Well, but what they're proposing is revenue neutral
Yeah.
to the city.
Right.
If we do the reduction in the
Both.
kilowatt hour and the service availability at the same time, it's
We-
revenue neutral.
Yeah.
Be in the same place.
Yeah, you're seeing a
Yes.
0.2%, you
Yes.
know, and that's 0.002, you know, change in overall what's coming in or out. It's just it's pretty much flat. There's three quick questions that I have. Like one, was the average kilowatt usage? I saw the average kilowatt usage there, 981
Yeah.
for monthly.
Residential.
For residential, is that based over a full year, or is that?
Yes, so this was using your
That's crazy.
fiscal
I
year
thought we were at like
23
1300.
data.
So 2023 data.
The 2023 data? Yeah, I thought we were higher. I thought we were much higher.
Right.
Interesting. So that's the first one. And the second one is one of your initial graphs showed a purchase of power, I think, or like a growth in consumption going up by 1% per year.
For your purchase power for MPUA, correct.
Cost.
The cost,
Not the cost, so not necessarily our usage.
correct.
of
Usage
said-
flatlined.
Usage flatline, because
The
like
cost
over the
going up.
past, because I'm looking at our utility usage and revenue, and over the past 3 years, I've seen a 3.7 decrease between 22 to 23, and then a 3% decrease from 23 to 24.
In cost or in usage?
In electric consumption.
Consumption,
Yeah,
right.
so I didn't know if that was what that, I saw the purchase power. I didn't know if you took into account any sort of, trends in electric consumption and usage, if we're
Yes, so
seeing
we have your
downtrend.
data all the way back from 2021
Cool.
through 24. So we looked at all those years on trends with your expenses, with your revenues, with usage patterns, and that is taken into account.
Okay, cool. That's answers my technical questions.
And the only last one is the demand rate. And the cost of service distribution demand rate is 371. It's not listed on here, but that's what the cost of service is. So by bumping up the demand rate slightly by 18 cents, we're moving towards that. And we're able to decrease that energy charge for those large customers as well, which they're a lot higher users with their kilowatt hour usage. So this will be a saving. You can see, and the average is 70% for these 81 customers. There's close to 80 in this class.
I have one final question. And this is kind of in terms of the overall scope of this study. This is taking a look at our current revenue and expenditures and the cost structure internally. This is not taking a look at where we should be in terms of any sort of like comparison chart to any other
Correct.
utilities or anything. This is just internally a cost summary of what our structure looks
Correct.
like.
But if I'm speaking out of line, gentlemen, tell me, I would
Yeah.
think you guys could ask them, what are they seeing in other communities?
Yeah, and I guess that would be the next question. I just didn't know if the scope was there for
Right.
this.
Right.
What is our cost structure looking like in terms of cities of our size? Are we, I know you were talking about this as a revenue neutral example and look at it, but are we generally high or low when we're taking a look at like what we provide and what we are showing? Can you guys answer that, or is this just that's out of the range of this?
Right. So rate surveys, you hired us to look at your utility, and every utility is unique. And it can be dangerous if you're comparing yourself to the neighbor city, because they may have things you don't know that are going on. There might be not as much cash, or they might be much more leveraged in debt than you are. The other thing is some utilities may have power cost adjustment mechanisms that can kind of cover a lot of their power supply cost that is not included in the written tariff that you look at when you look up the rate. So, we're looking at your cost structure, like Bob mentioned, your history, and we talked to staff about budgeting going forward, kind of get an agreement on inflation and so on, and capital programs. And this is really customized to you.
Okay.
Now, on the rate design, I kind of went in depth with the customer charge, the availability fee, that being nothing right now, 0, that is kind of out, a little different than everyone else. And then with implementing that, and as Bob mentioned, taking steps towards the cost of service availability fee, and he started with, a number here to just get us started. But then in the next year, we might look at, okay, yep, I think we're good with our revenue. It's matching up with what is showing in our projection here. Let's do another neutral rate adjustment and increase that availability fee and decrease the energy fee. So that in 2020, that would be for a 2026 rate. And then you could potentially do it again in 27. Now we could do it by year, or if you're comfortable, we could potentially do a 3-year rate design that would take, that availability fee and show you over 3 years it gradually moving to cost of service.
Right. And this gets to the question earlier, correct, Dan, about could we do it in stages?
Yeah.
Correct.
No,
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
okay. I appreciate that. That was,
And with the availability fee, I know you said that was developed from the history to recover costs. Would changing like what you call it help with the customers, or because actually calling it a monthly customer charge or facilities charge, availability fee, that is a good terminology for it. But if that's what you're scared of, customers coming back and saying we just got rid of this exact fee and now it's coming back, or you're trying to ease it back in towards cost of service, that's an option as well.
I don't think you're going to have a problem with that. Just personally, from a public relations standpoint, if you say you're adding a fee, nobody's going to be happy with that.
That's true.
Paired with hey, we're adding this fee, but bringing the rate down, and I think pairing that with, hey, this is going to be revenue neutral. You're going to be paying essentially the same amount on your bill. Maybe a slight difference of, of 0.2 or something, something like that, where it's pretty much it'll be neutral to your bill. It's just a rate difference in charge style, I think is a way to put it. It's just one of those things. Anytime you mention that you're adding a fee to things, it never goes exactly over well.
I think too, Kyle, that there's a lot of anger within this community about all the rate changes and all of that. And I think that is something that's really going to have to be explained thoroughly over and over until people understand that.
Yeah. I don't think people like seeing the changes and differences all the time. So if I were to make a recommendation to the committee personally, I would recommend not doing a step fee up. Yeah, it's smaller increments, but they're going to get that notice of, oh, hey, we're increasing this fee again.
And we've heard that before
Yeah.
about doing adjustments every year.
Yeah,
Yes.
can't we just, get something to where I can budget it easier?
Right.
So
That's a good point.
that would be my,
That's a good point.
you rip the Band-Aid off once, basically. Like,
And I want to just make sure when we say it's revenue neutral, there is a bell curve, right? And so there's some folks that are on either end of that are not neutral. And that shows up in that chart for each class, that like in the residential here, you know, someone using 500 kilowatt hours is going to see an impact of 380. So if we move that $8 up, I think you said it was it like $15 was the cost of service?
Yep, $13.47.
That 380 is going to go up. So their impact is going to go, I'm not sure exactly where, but it's at, you know, 380 or 6% right now. It's going to go up beyond that to get to cost of service. So when we're doing this, and we've done this before, we do gradual adjustments. People like to see smaller incremental changes each year. They may not be used to that today, but generally smaller incremental, folks understand what inflation is today, just with what we've all gone through here. But they understand costs will go up, but what they don't want is a 10% increase. And then, you know, maybe a 10% decrease and another increase that's kind of moving with a capital program. What we're trying to do is set, the way we've set your revenue requirement based on depreciation and that optimal operating income, we can maintain a level rate design that is providing a level and ever gradually increasing revenue requirement to cover your costs. So if you have a high capital program come in, it's not going to impact your rates. It would impact your cash level and or borrowing. I don't know if I helped with that, but we during our history of implementing customer charges or moving those monthly fees, we like to see it moved over time. That's where we've seen the most ease. But every utility, like I mentioned earlier, every utility is unique. And you're the folks that understand your city the best. So, you know, we can increase that $8, but I'll just say it's going to be a bigger impact on both ends of that usage profile that we're showing you.
Right.
And we can run it that way and show you, you know, what it would be if we went all the way.
What do you want us to do?
So what do you need from the committee this evening?
So, overall, are you comfortable with the overall neutral adjustment with a plus or minus 1%? So kind of as we were looking at that -2 for the residential and the demand, and then a 8.8% increase on the commercial. And I guess the agreement that we would, it sounds like the residential and commercial were intentionally tied together, so we would be kind of untying them.
David, are you okay with this?
Well, I'm tempted to say that we leave the demand charge out and see what that looks like, because then that just reflects real prices. And people can understand real prices better than they can understand some arbitrary demand
That's true.
charge.
Can you express that to him?
Okay, this is Dave Weiss. I'll try to explain my discomfort here. We just got rid of the demand charge, and people are not going to be happy to see the demand charge come back.
The service
charge,
availability.
yeah, service charge. And I think if we went without that charge and just used the actual rate for the kilowatt hour, people would be more likely to understand that as being reflective of actual cost and any changes in that reflective of inflation without having the arbitrary lump sum added in there. That's just my opinion.
It's easier to understand. Sorry, I'm talking out loud.
It's okay.
That's what we're doing now, right?
Yeah.
That's not what's shown on there.
No, but
No.
that's what we're actually doing right now.
That's what
Yeah.
she
Right,
said.
that's not what they're showing you. They're
Right.
showing you an alternative way. And so what they're asking is, what are you comfortable with? Are you comfortable with what they're proposing? Or not? I mean, that's what they need to know.
Because we can get that 2%, that 0.2% reduction by just adjusting the energy and leaving the availability fee out of it, leaving that zero. I agree that since I think you had that implemented more as an adder originally.
Correct.
To, as you mentioned, increase a balance that you were looking to get to a number for cash,
Correct.
and then you backed it off. That was used differently than what we're kind of looking at using it for.
But the public don't
But
understand.
that's still in their minds, right? So I do agree that the timing is kind of, it's hard since you had it and then you just removed it. Like just this year, is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, I think, like. and-
Yeah, with the September bills, yeah.
Yeah, I think, personally, I think instead of changing it and then changing it back and changing it back, you know, we might, my next recommendation to the committee and to think about is to wait and, you know, we have our budget based upon what our rates are right now.
Correct.
You know, so instead of changing it to, you know, and I know it's revenue neutral to our city essentially. But instead of changing that all up and then like, you know, taking a look at our budget and having to kind of think about our budget, you know, we could think about the next fiscal year, changing it then. I know that's at the
I
time
think
when
that's
it.
fair.
Yeah, instead of
we do
changing
now.
it back
Yeah.
in the matter of 3 months, 4 months, whatever it has been. You know,
I agree. I
That-
do agree with that.
yeah, is like maybe, you know, I like, you know, I wouldn't be, you know, as long as we're also all in agreement of, you know, okay, we're adding the service fee, but we're taking down the kilowatt hours. I understand like that it's, you know, it gets us to where other cities are and everything else, and it's a recommendation from, you know, from people that know. But just changing it all the time is kind of annoying, I'll say. As a consumer myself.
My only thought would be is to increase the commercial because they're not even.
You're talking about,
As I mentioned, we could redo this rate design to zero out in this commercial, zero out the $12, and then adjust that 13.6 cents under the current charge. We could increase the proposed rate to 13.6 something to get a 0.8% increase from them.
You made an interesting argument that I haven't heard. You know, initially when I'm thinking about demand charge, or not demand charge, sorry,
Yeah,
service availability fee.
Availability fee, yeah.
Sorry, the availability fee. You know, I considered it initially, you know, a hit for our lower income individuals, you know, versus the higher, you know, because you're like the rate you use, you lose, or, you know, you use, you pay. It was kind of our kind of motto. But the way you put it and showing that like, hey, actually, you know, I figured lower income people have lower usages. You're saying the opposite, and I think you're correct there because, you know, people don't have high efficiency appliances, you know, a lot of our low income are likely using plug-in heaters and things like that, or baseboard heaters at that. They're not able to pay for, you know, big heat pumps and things like that to be efficient. So hearing that argument has definitely changed a bit of my thinking. But yeah, I just think we wait until the next fiscal year until we really decide to change our electric.
How do you feel about that? How do you feel about waiting, Harold?
I agree with that very.
I like
feel like
the better
we've had too
option.
many things we've thrown at them, and we need to
You agree?
Yeah.
just be calm for a while.
Right,
Well,
but-
and beyond that, and like take a look at the, you know, we can. I like the recommendations.
I do too.
I will say, I like the recommendations. Taking a look, I like the idea of what you have, you know, and what you proposed. It's kind of what we've seen kind of in the past with when we were taking a look at service availability fees ourselves. And we've had this discussion 20 times,
At least.
like in the past 2 years. So
Well, and it is a revenue neutral, so I mean, it's not.
It's the thing,
but
yeah, it's just
one or
that-
the other. We're going up and down. One's going up, one's going down. But I just think it's timing right now.
Well, I don't,
For the citizens of Salem.
well, but I don't think these gentlemen are proposing that we make this or implement this immediately. I don't
Okay.
think that's what they're proposing. They're performing this rate study for us.
Right.
So that when we do come to the point of that next, whether we do it after
Yeah,
the
no.
winter or after the summer months, that next kind of after peak demand season, that we consider these, whatever they
And
propose.
I think I would very much so do.
Gotcha. Am I correct in that, gentlemen? I mean, you're designing this for us for our, basically the next budget year, not to implement in 2 months.
okay.
Yes, correct.
Yes.
Yeah, and I did, you know, your financials show you're in good shape, so to, you know,
Right, for the
to go
current-
some time without.
yeah.
So I say let's wait until 2026.
But they still need decisions from you all and what you would like to see so they can wrap up this study and give us an actual formal recommendation and what those rates should look like.
The examples we put there have, you know, that overall little tweak there, right, for the fairness. So residential's going down a little bit and a step in the customer charge. If you'd like to have us increase that availability fee in the first year, we can do that. But exactly right, we can get this tied up and then you could bring it to approval down the road when you need to.
I like your proposal myself. It seems fair. I can't see a change in it myself.
Is that what you guys want to do?
That's what
I think it's a good idea. I have one oddball request. In terms of things that I would like to see to finish this up, the average service availability fee, and I know you're not trying to compare to other cities and things of that nature. But the average city has about a $25 service availability fee around here. Would you recommend, or what would you say about like showing a high, like I know you're showing about $8 there or so, and that's a COS service. So is that what our actual service availability should be, you're saying? Is that
Yes.
1347?
Yep.
Okay.
So for your system and how your costs are derived by your customers and users, this is what is recouping that fixed cost
Gotcha.
recovery.
I guess that's
by
why
your
I
number of
must have.
customers.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, I'd like to see something along those lines. You know, I know we're showing right now. You've recommended about half of that, or about 8-ish. You know, I'd kind of
Yeah,
like to see
I can
what
show
happens
you
when you put in like
exactly.
15
Yeah.
or something like that. Something round. I don't want to say 1347 exactly, but what are you
Then
doing
we'd
over
have to
there?
reduce our then we'd have to reduce our per kilowatt.
That is true,
Yeah.
but it would be, you know, as what they're saying, this would be the
Trying,
recommendation of them,
flashes
like
up and
our
disappears.
fixed costs
Is
per
Is that your
customer
end, Sean, or
are
mine?
No, it's not up
13.5.
there.
Did we lose
Yeah,
them?
but
I'll
it's
skip.
coming from,
I don't know what happened.
sorry, guys, we lost visual there for just a bit.
Oh, that's right.
But like so I'll just keep going. Our fixed cost per customer, as they were saying, is about 13.5. I would like to see something like that as well, and like what the per kilowatt hour usage should be if we took it to that 13.5. Seeing that almost every other city is charging, between 25
more
and
than that.
35, those kind of marks. I'd like to just see that. And then we can make, then we have more than just the 1 or 2 scenarios. If we have 3 scenarios like that, then we can see
that
what
what
that
you
looks
wanna
like.
do?
Because it could be that we have a lower rate than most other places.
Is that what you want them to do then?
I would like to see that, yes.
Okay, and we can do that.
That's fine.
Our recommendation wouldn't be to do that though, but
Okay.
for information,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. Because like I mentioned, that low-use customer is going, that $3.80 monthly impact is going to go up.
Yeah.
This is the fairest.
Yeah. And so kind of what Bob has here, we're starting at 8, so if we increased it, in the following year by $2, and we do $2 increments, or we do $3 increments, or, what you're comfortable with, until we get to that cost of service.
Okay.
Yep.
So with this availability fee being $13.50,
Yep.
the energy would be 12.2 cents.
Okay.
And that would be that 0.2 reduction for residential, just as an example.
What about 45? No, I'm just kidding. Let's not go there.
Yeah, really.
Okay, so it sounds like the rate design we put together would be an option A. And then we'll put another rate design together that brings that availability fee to cost of service with a rounded digit. And then maintain, like for that, we would get to that minus 0.2 revenue change. So we'd adjust the energy charge to get there. And then you'd have that as information as well.
Right,
So we'll give you option A and then a full availability fee, option B,
right.
rate design for each of the 3 rates.
Right.
Sounds good to me.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Great discussion, really. Yeah, once you kind of talked about how soon the last change was made, I do agree that you might want to table it for a little while.
Just a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's gonna be a public relations nightmare.
Yeah.
Throw it right back in there
That's right,
again.
go on vacation and you can do it.
So do we have any other questions or comments or anything for the gentleman?
Any other questions or comments?
Nope, I'm done.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you have what you need, gentlemen? Yep.
Yep, I believe so, and Sally, I will send you this right after we get off. I'll put this in your hands, and
Okay.
but then Dan and I will continue to work on the rate option B, and then we can add that into this as well, so.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so very much for your time this evening.
Thanks,
you,
gentlemen.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you, have a good night.
Okay, we're moving on.
Give me just a second.
We're starting.
Where do I leave?
Say goodbye.
We're asking the same thing.
In your packet are the minutes of October 9th, which you need to take a look at real quick if you have not already done so. And I need a motion to approve those minutes.
I motion to approve these minutes.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the minutes of October 9th, 2024. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Okay, Stacy, we're ready for you.
At age 17.
Go away.
Quickly. Lots more numbers, I'll try. Okay. So this is, this thing don't want to stay. Okay, well, anyway, First slide shows utility usage and revenues for the 2 prior years, and then July through November of the last year to compare to July of November of this fiscal year. So year-to-date of this fiscal year, we have billed nearly 20.2 million kilowatt hours. That is down slightly compared to the same time frame as last year. In terms of electric revenues, we have billed close to 2.8 million and have collected just over 2.8 million year-to-date. Purchase of power, this is what the city pays to MPUA to provide power to us. We paid out nearly 1.9 million. That is about the same as we did last year. Water consumption, we have billed nearly 55 million gallons. That's up slightly compared to last year. Water revenues billed close to 361,000, with 66,500 being the base rate. And we have collected 355,000 of water revenues year to date. Then looking at the sewer consumption, we've billed nearly 48.5 million gallons. Sewer revenues billed is close to 532,000, with 103,000 of that being the base rate. Sewer revenues collected year to date is around 502,000. Okay, so electric fund summary. So the top section are the revenues showing fiscal years 23 and 24, then July through November of last fiscal year. The next column is what we have budgeted for fiscal year 25, highlighting the highlighted column showing year to date of this fiscal year. So far, for all revenue sources, we are just under 3 million, with permits and fees showing 137% of what is budgeted. That is for insufficient check fees. And the miscellaneous category showing at 115% of the budgeted. That is reimbursement from the school for electric work for the trades building that we did. The overall expenditures are around 2.5 million. Most expense categories are aligned with expectations for this point of the fiscal year, with supplies running a little high. That was due to a computer we had to purchase. And then capital improvements running high for this time of the year. That's due to the COP payment. Sally had mentioned that's the 2017 upgrades we did for the AMI system. So overall, this leaves a surplus of 461,000 year to date. Then the next several slides show the details within each category, if anyone has any questions. Okay, if no questions, we'll move on to the electric DNR fund.
Sorry.
Okay. So in the electric DNR fund, we've had some interest payments and insurance revenue, and for expenses, we purchased a transformer. This leaving a surplus of 37,000 in this fund. And then if no questions, we'll move on to electric reserve fund. Okay, we don't have much activity in the electric reserve fund other than some interest payments, and that leaves the fund at a surplus of 26,000. And then the next slide shows a summary of all electric funds. This slide shows the beginning balance of all 3 electric funds as of July 1st, then the revenue expenditures year to date, and then the ending fund balance as of November 30th. So as you can see, the total of all electric funds is at 3 million. Any questions on the electric funds? Okay, moving on. Okay, on the water fund summary, water total revenues year to date are 423,000. Our expenditures year to date are at 372,000, leaving us a surplus of 51,000. On the expense side, the miscellaneous category is showing high. That's mostly due to one-time annual expenditures paid at the beginning of the fiscal year. That's included general liability insurance and primacy fee and the serve line program. The next few slides shows the details within the revenue and expenditures for the water fund. And if anyone has any questions on those. Moving on. Okay, so the water DNR fund. So the Water DNR Fund, we've had some grant revenue and expenditures for the lead service line inventory and the new well and tower project and an insurance reimbursement, leaving the fund with a surplus of $61,000. Contracts have been awarded for the construction of the well and tower, and construction should start soon on that. Then moving on to the Water Reserve Fund. So the Water Reserve account, we've had some interest revenue, and we've had, on the expense side, we had an $82,000 expense for the replacement of a motor and pump at one of the wells due to the lightning strike. We are still waiting on an insurance reimbursement on this expense. This does leave the reserve fund in a deficit for this fiscal year, which will be offset with prior year fund balances. And then the next slide shows the summary of all three together. Shows the beginning balance of each fund as of July 1st, and the ending fund balance is at 1.7 for all water funds combined. Okay, any questions on the water fund? Okay, moving on to sewer. Okay, the sewer all revenue sources year to date are at $542,000. Total expenses are around $572,000, leaving a deficit of $30,000. That is mostly due to the COP payment that we made in November. We make 2 payments a year, so it was a large hit for this time of the year. If you look at the comparison column for last year, we were also at a deficit at this time. That gap will continue to reduce each month. The expense categories running a little high at this time is the maintenance. This is due to the equipment maintenance. We've had to purchase a pump for the lift station, which was $16,000. Then the capital improvement category, that is the COP payment I just talked about. And then the next slides are the details within each fund, which each category. Okay, we can move on to sewer DNR. No questions? Okay, the sewer DNR, we've had some grant revenues and expenditures for the wastewater treatment plant Phase 2 project. This fund does have a deficit of $9,000 for the fiscal year. That will be offset with prior year fund balances. The Phase 2 project bid has been awarded, but still awaiting contract to be approved. And then on the sewer reserve fund, we've had some interest revenue. We did have an emergency purchase of $41,000 for a 3-phase breaker that went out due to the flood last month. This leaves the reserve fund balances in a deficit for the fiscal year. Again, this will be offset with prior year fund balances. And then the last slide shows the summary of all those sewer funds. The beginning balances there at the first column as of July 1st, and the revenue expenditures year to date, then the ending fund balances as of November 30th. Total of all sewer funds is $746,000. Any questions?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Billing updates.
The only thing I got is that we sent out about 2,500 bills this last cycle, and about 210 bills we paid.
Okay. Have any of those come back on addresses?
Email?
Yeah?
No.
Okay. Good. Okay. Work reports from utility crews. Good luck.
Good evening, Mayor, Alderman, and committee members. I'm going to keep this pretty brief tonight. Actually, Sally's loaded up. I have 80 slides to run through, but I'm going to try to get through them as soon as I can. So we'll start with the wastewater treatment plant. This is pretty much the same briefing I gave to the alderman last night. The crews are still checking and repairing systems after the flood damage that we had, where we had roughly 4 feet of water pass over the whole oxidation ditch and everything out there. So there's been extensive damage to electrical components and different things. And our guys are doing a great job of troubleshooting that equipment, as well as all the other crews coming in. They had to literally rebuild the roadways into the sewer plant. They were washed away. So a lot of work went into that in a big team effort way. So continue to, like I said, equipment repairs, daily testing, and like I said, we're just going to be troubleshooting systems for some time now and to try and make sure we weed out any possible issues. So. The water department repaired several water service lines and a main break over the past 2-3 weeks. The fire hydrant maintenance and repair crews continued working until they finished 290 hydrants, maintenance on 290 hydrants, and diagnosed and documented any issues with those on diamond maps, which was very helpful for us. So they will be returning once the weather warms up to finish painting 140 hydrants across the city, weather permitting. So your water crews also conduct locates on a regular basis. So electric, we were talking about the electric thing, and we joke about the squirrels, but in my time here in the past 6 months, we've had 2 vehicles strike and totally knock poles off their base, so we lost power during those situations. So it, believe it or not, happens more than you would think. So
I do have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
About the squirrel family. Is there any way to prevent that from happening? I mean, I don't know what they do or how they do it or how they get in, but is there a way to prevent that?
Obviously they can scale any pole, but one of the preventative things that we are doing is by contracting out and having the lines cleared. I don't know if you ever drive down MacArthur, you could just literally see them going from the tree onto the lines freely. So once you cut those trees back, that helps substantially. So,
I mean, what do the squirrels even do to the lines to stop the electric? I mean, I don't.
Electric crew tells me that squirrels will actually chew. There's an aluminum, around your lines that they'll chew on that. So we had a line burn up out in the industrial park, and they really believe it was a squirrel chewing on the line. So, and that
may not even be preventable.
Squirrels are going to squirrel. I don't know what to.
I come out of a bird feeder.
Right. I do. All jokes aside, I do truly believe the forester contract that we have right now, that they're getting out there and clearing our feeder line 1 is going to help us a lot. So, and then having hired back a lineman and an apprentice lineman to work on the tree trimming crew for service lines around the city and stuff, that's helping out quite a bit. So they're catching up on backlogged work orders.
Maybe you should start feeding them, and that way they won't be hungry for the aluminum.
I can do that.
Or Steve can trap them and bring them to your house.
There we go. They are destructive. So
You're wanting cats and squirrels at my house.
our power crew got on doing maintenance and repairs on 95 snowflakes and hung them around town.
They look nice too.
They do.
Thank
They look
you.
very nice.
I'll pass those kudos on. There is a blue, instead of a warm white snowflake, there's a blue one, and they will be putting it up as a Easter egg hunt, I guess, for folks. So
Is that already up, or is it?
no,
I haven't seen it.
they went to hang it, and it kind of didn't. Only half of it worked, so they pulled it back down, and it's like a mystery. It started working again. So they're
We've got people asking.
Yeah,
Yeah.
people are
I know,
wanting to
I
know
think
where it's
it's the
at.
weirdest thing in
Hilarious.
the world, but they're.
There's not one on 10th Street. I live on 11th, and there's one on 11th, and I noticed 10th Street is missing one, so.
Gotcha. Okay. May take a note. But now we just told everybody where it'd be. So
Where the blue one's gonna be.
right.
So everybody flocks to see the blue snowflake.
There you go. They're conducting streetlight repairs and replacements. I always like to remind folks that we were talking about that new system. It would be great to be able to report a streetlight that's having issues and stuff, but you can do that by calling into the office during the day, and they'll do a work order on that, and we'll get on those. If you see a night light, a street light, and it's on, it's off, it's on, it's off, that's a sensor or a ballast going bad. So it's not a cost savings thing that we're trying to do. It's literally needing a repair. So the mayor's really great about being around town in the dark and when he's working and letting us know what lights are out, which is appreciated. So. Like I said, we're monitoring the contractor that's doing the power line, a feeder line clearing project. There's been minimal complaints. We do appreciate everybody being patient with us. The most efficient way for those crews to do that work is to do, 3 or 4 expanses of line and then come back the next day and pick up the brush. So if they're cutting and then getting down and clearing away the brush, it eats up more time, and we like the way they're doing it. We've had a couple of calls like, hey, there's brush in my yard, and then an hour or two later, there's brush in my yard. I'm gonna throw it out in your parking lot if it's not removed. And we just ask that you be patient with us, and we're doing what we can. So Levi and his crew are doing a great job. So. Locate's being conducted by your electric department as well. So, did the utility members have any questions? That's the quick down and dirty.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Alderwoman Dent, if I could add one thing to kind of add on to the streetlight discussion. I did mention this, I think, yesterday, the Alderman meeting, but so we have submitted a grant for streetlight replacement. So we have roughly 505 remaining streetlights that are incandescent bulbs or light fixtures, or they're out entirely. And so we have submitted a grant to replace all of the remaining streetlights that are not LED. And so we're replacing the fixtures themselves. And so that, like I said, it has been now submitted. Board approved it last night. And, if awarded, then like I said, that will be for the light fixtures themselves, as well as to hire a crew to come and do that replacement so that we knock that out.
What dollar amount is it for the grant for? Do you
About $220,000.
Wow, great.
So,
I
and
hope you get it.
this is it's a rare grant situation. This one does not require a match. So that doesn't happen regularly.
That doesn't happen very often, yeah.
So just wanted to update about that.
Apologies. Thanks for making me pause for a second. I wanted to say thanks to our superintendent, Chris McGirt, came out tonight, water superintendent, just in case there were any questions for him. Chris has been with the department for 28 years. There are lines over in the. For example, that he's super helpful over in the mayor's neighborhood. He can tell you what lines are bedded where and stuff. The knowledge he has is greatly appreciated. So,
That's good.
thank you.
Nice.
Thank you.
I have a question. Are we going to vote on the hometown grid situation tonight, or?
If you all are ready, if you all are ready to, that's up to you all.
Because I want to know what it's going to cost.
Yeah, I think we need to wait.
Okay.
Again, we would have to factor that into the annual expenditures in order to figure out what impact that might have on rates.
Yeah, I want to know that before we vote.
Gotcha.
So.
Okay.
Explain that.
Yeah.
So
Maybe next meeting.
I don't want to go too long. I kind of took a look at some of the numbers, and when we were looking at it, say, let's average 1,000 text messages, calls, everything to the company a month. In totality, it would cost around $8,000 for the year if we added water at that too.
$8,000 for what?
$8,000 for the plan if you were to go from if you were to use, because if you were to use this service for 5 years.
I think 1,000 texts and calls a month is way high.
I think it's high too.
So
Consider it less than 8,000.
Right,
8,000 for the year.
So what he had shared previously was that cost for the texts and calls usually averages somewhere between $25 and $100 a month.
Yeah.
So, huh?
Yeah.
He said 50. He said.
Yeah.
Oh, did he say
yeah, I
okay,
assumed
sorry.
About 1,000
So,
text messages would
gotcha.
be $45.
Gotcha. So just so that you guys understand, if you want to know what impact that will have on rates, we got to do the same deep dive that we do when we're trying to set rates every year.
Okay.
And so is that what you want to do?
I think we need to
No,
wait.
not tonight,
No,
obviously.
not
We're not
tonight, but I
prepared.
think we need to do that so we can
I don't want to go.
decide on
Okay.
this.
Okay. We can work on that. I'm just saying that's more intensive staff time to pull all of that together, is what
Yeah.
I'm saying.
Well, I
It's
think,
not gonna be immediate.
don't you think we need that?
I think it'd be a great thing. I think it's,
Make
honestly, like,
Good decision?
personally, I'm ready to go with it.
But I
you
think
know,
we
for a
need to know what it's
recommendation.
gonna cost our customers before,
It's not gonna cost them really anything.
Not much.
I think that this is a
But-
discussion that we need to talk about later. It's
Yeah, that's
kind of
fine.
the wrong
I
part
can- yeah.
of the agenda and should have been taken care of at the time that we were talking about this.
Yeah, this was
Well,
just
I
kind of
kept
learning about it.
bringing it up.
I mean,
Huh?
I brought it up a couple times
But
about
the-
what it's gonna cost per customer.
And that was discussed, but you're talking about the total amount, which we could not give them at the time.
No, I'm talking about what it, per customer, what it's gonna cost,
That's what I'm saying to you.
and I brought that up a couple times.
Okay.
Okay.
Because when are we talking about implementing it?
we haven't even recommended it yet for approval.
Right.
Never
Yeah.
mind.
Talk to you later about that. Okay, are there any questions or comments from those in attendance? Dave, do you want to come to the mic?
I just have an easy question. I haven't kept up with it lately. I'd like to ask, are we still taking money out of the electric department and putting it in other funds?
Stacy, you want to answer that?
We do a 5%, what we call a franchise fee.
Franchise fee.
So it's greatly reduced compared to previous years.
And what is that, what fund does that money go into?
That's going to the general fund.
And what is that money being spent for?
Whatever's needed.
Right.
So, I can answer why. I mean, back in the day, like, the reason why we take that 5% is that's a typical cost that we see in almost any other utility company.
So you can pay the cost
Of what the
other departments.
cost of doing business, so it's talking about like,
For other departments, I understand.
Stacy, Steve Payne, and
I
a couple
have
of other.
hearing aids, so
Yeah.
sometimes I need to concentrate a little more, I'm sorry.
Yeah, administrative
What
costs.
I heard them say was that we're very close to being revenue neutral on electric. The presenters did not wave arms and legs for an increase. We're fully allocated in the financials to pay the total operating cost. The last thing I want to say is, I don't give a rat's petunia what other cities do. I'm only concerned with this one. Customers are paying twice the rate that you are paying to kilowatts to the real electric provider, and that's gonna cause a problem if you increase a service rate or stick anything else again anytime soon. All hell is gonna break loose in all quadrants of this community. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Any other questions or comments? Before we adjourn for the evening, I'd like to wish everybody a happy holiday season, that you have a good time and you stay safe. And is there a motion to adjourn?
Also move.
I'll second.
Motion's been made and seconded that the utility committee adjourn. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Have a good evening.